We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Hush now, city kids, gather round for other myths. Hush now, city kids. When it came to me after so long, I didn't have no choices in the streets where I was from. When I think about the pain, I didn't have no choices. I took what I had sworn. Hush now, city kids, gather round for urban myths. Hush now, city kids.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Geordies here, Geordies there on the Tuesday after the defeat at Bournemouth. We're not going to bore you with the details of that game. I think we've talked about that defeat enough. We are, though, with a panel of George, Kevin, Al-Walid, Mitch and Stu, going to talk about Simon Jordan's little outburst today about Kieran Trippier and on TalkSport, which I've got to be honest, I gave up listening to at least a year ago now because it used to just aggravate me. For these particular reasons, Simon Jordan has waded into the Trippier fan confrontation by saying that you can't basically point to supporters and say during lockdown we missed them, and then when you've put a bad performance in on the pitch and the fans have travelled and spent a lot of money, you can't take criticism. That's essentially what he's trying to say. I think this is typical of Simon Jordan blowing things out of all proportion. The whole thing was put to bed by the fan and by the player. And again, Simon Jordan just weighing in, George, on something that really hasn't got anything to do with him.
Aye. That's off again.
Yes, he's paused. We'll have to take him out and bring him back in. He had issues this morning. Go on then, Kev. Your thoughts on that?
Like you said, it's typical Simon Jordan, essentially. And I heard it a little bit, and I heard other inserts with Martin O'Neill and giving his 50 quid what he has, it was nonsensical. I mean, it was the context of the story was taken out of all proportion from what I heard and what he was saying. And yes, we traveled, however, 300, 400, 500, 600 miles there and back, whatever. Yes, we want a performance. Yes, you want to do that. But again, fans can have their say, absolutely. But after, the lad even come out and said, I've had a few beers, I've had this, I've had that, I was emotional. Well, on the flip side, I want that from my player, Kieran Trippier. I want to show a bit of passion and say, hey, look, he might have been, hot-headed. It's like the Mikel Arteta thing. He's got every right to come back and say, hey, we're trying here. We've got injured players here. We're not just laying down and put on a lounger at the beach. We're not exactly, we haven't down tools. It's showing that, as a captain and as a leader and standing up for the players that he's playing with, this is where I stand. And yes, you can have a go, but at the same time, posing the question back to the fan, which is fine. Look, you draw a line under the sand of it. You don't have to make a massive TalkSport story out of it just because it's Newcastle United. And that's, again, the narrative that they always seem to go down. Something happens, something occurs. Well, Newcastle are at fault, and it'll be headline news for 3 or 4 days, and it'll just all blow over. Then something again will happen, and will just recycle itself. And look, and again, I stay off social media pretty much all the time. I just read and see and look and create my own opinions from it all, and it is what it is. Look, move on. We've got bigger things to worry about than Simon Jordan spouting his mouth off in central London, with games coming up, international games. What we may have to look at and see. With players away, we've got injuries to be more worried about. We've got bigger things, bigger fish to fry instead of worrying about Simon Jordan.
Yep. Okay. Stu, are you with us or not? Is it your phone?
It was me mother ringing. Perfect
Go on,
timing.
mate. Go on, mate. Simon Jordan.
Well, I think Mitch and myself covered it a lot on Sunday in the professionals, but has Simon Jordan got a point? Are the players, are they devoid of criticism? Are they protected species where they can, I'm from a sales background and I just think you take the claps, you've got to be able to take the slaps. Now, again, I'm not privy to what was said, but I think we need a bit of perspective on this. Simon Jordan is paid to be controversial and stir things up, and that's what he'll do. And it wasn't the Newcastle fans, it was one fan, and as you said, it's all been dealt with. And there's nothing wrong with him showing a bit of passion and Kieran Trippier showing a bit of passion, because I'm sure there was a few fans there who would have had the same feeling. It's just that he was the one that got hurt. But he's been man enough to apologise and say, I shouldn't have said it. I overreacted as the heat of the moment. But that's not going to get the clicks for TalkSport, is it? So I think with Simon Jordan, he'll throw in a few long words, etc., etc. But some of the points he makes are valid, not just on this case, but on most cases. But then he goes off on a tangent to try and justify even further. And again, as I said, that's what he's paid for. But the way my interpretation of it is, it's something and nothing. And of course, it'll get blown out by the London press, who use any mode of anything they can really to beat Newcastle with. And if that's the stick with Kieran Trippier, who is and has been for a number of years a model professional, so I think that, as we covered on Sunday morning, he was probably frustrated with his own performance, frustrated with his team's performance, frustrated with the result, and then hear a bit of criticism. He's reacted in that way. So I'm sure he's probably slightly embarrassed by it, but at the same time, I'm glad he's done it. It's the one good thing what happens with Newcastle fans is when we get attacked, we start uniting, and that should bring us together nicely for the next game.
Okay, George, we're still on the same subject. Hopefully you can hear us and you've got your internet. What's your take on Simon Jordan?
Yeah.
With a delay.
Paused again, I think.
Yeah, he's not having a good night, George, unfortunately. Yeah, it's a pity, but Mitch, we'll come to you. We've lost Al Walid as well. He'll be back shortly.
That delay was quality. I am Simon Jordan. He's got to get some interest in the show during International Week, and Newcastle United are really an easy target. Like Stu said, we've discussed at length and in a little bit of depth about what could or couldn't be going on to make Trippier do what he did. For me, it remains just a sign of how much he's invested in Newcastle United, how much he cares. But equally, when you've got somebody like Simon Jordan, who some of the tales I've heard about him as an owner of a football club, for him to even vaguely have a conversation about what players should and shouldn't do is frankly outrageous. The way that I know certain players were treated under his ownership at Crystal Palace. He's just there to make a name for himself, get clicks and likes and hits on social media, and get the show listened to. And I'm sure if you take the emotion out of it, if they're talking about something else, it's probably decent crack, which creates a little bit of interest on a breakfast show. But the reality is half the stuff he says he probably doesn't mean, and nor does he really care. And nor should we. We're an easy target. We've always have been, long before any takeover. Anything that people said that was critical, particularly they could find a way under the previous owner to get riled up by praising what he was doing or criticising what the fans were doing, for example. So, you know, it's nothing new under the sun. It never has been. It never will be. Anybody wants to enter the argument what makes a club a big club. Well, everybody wants to talk about whether we're good, bad, or indifferent, and always has done. And sort of, so I kind of get a little bit immune to some of it. I just don't bite. Distance helps. As I'm sure Kevin agrees. The fact that I've got to go out of my way to tune into TalkSport on a internet radio, when there's millions of other things I could be listening to, particularly when I'm in the surgery, that helps a lot as well. But I'm kind of immune to any of the crap that comes out of his mouth.
Okay, Al-Walid, Simon Jordan, a name that even you in Saudi Arabia will know only too well. He's at it again. He does it for controversy, doesn't he?
Well, to be honest, I don't care much about Simon Jordan. I didn't hear or listen to him. I just remember him from something before the takeover. He says that the takeover didn't happen. But after that, I never listened to him. Anyway, for me, for what happened with Kieran Trippier, I think this is fine. It's not. I'm not gonna say it's right, and also I'm not gonna say it's wrong. I don't know what Kieran Trippier hear from the fan actually, but I think the reaction is fine. We saw players jumping into the fans and have conflict and maybe fight, maybe drop the phones and stuff like that. But he was really. It's great that a captain talking to the fans this way. I think this is respectful. I'm really high valued Trippier as a leader. Maybe this is a way to reaction to what happened. He did everything in the field as a captain for the team. I think this is just as Dr. Neil says, it's just trying for clicks. It's easy to find anything like that to make it a subject. So for me, I think this is what happened. I believe it's more positive than anything else.
Okay, a couple of people been in touch just asking how Steve Wilkinson's doing. I've been in touch with Steve today, and he hasn't been well, bless him, but he is making slow improvements, shall we say. But I've passed on everyone's best wishes on the platform. I know George was keen to do that, so I'll pass on George's best wishes. But if you're watching, Steve, keep a hold, son, and you just rest up, mate. You've earned it, mate. But yeah, passing on all our best. I'm sure all the lads agree as well. Ask George. Well, if we get George, we will be asking George, Tom. I'll bring him back in again. There he is. George, are you with us?
I am. I hope so.
Oh, that's better. So, George, Simon Jordan, what do you think?
Well, Trippier's, if he's not anything, he's a passionate player about everything. And he's responded to some criticism of his team, and he's tried to put it right with the fans. It can be a mistake, but just sometimes that sort of passion does pay off. Now, afterwards, the fan owned up and everybody was happy. So, Simon Jordan's found something else to talk about. That's all it is to me. And he'll talk about anything. He'll talk about two flies walking up a wall, but anything to do with things that he had to do with at Crystal Palace, he'll not talk about those. So, it's a much ado about nothing. I suspect Kieran Trippier is probably a little bit embarrassed today. But apart from that, move on. The fans that were involved all seemed quite happy at the end of it. As were others, and yeah, move on. It's a storm in a teacup for me.
Okay, don't forget you can ask George if we still have him on at that period. I will go through the questions. So if you've got any questions, ask him. Kevin, we're going to move on to the transfer window, which is only a couple of months away now. We're rapidly moving through November. Christmas will here before we know it, and then we'll be into January. Dan Ashworth, of course, will be working with working on a list with Eddie Howe and obviously with the owners and looking at the financial fair play and deciding what they can spend, where they need to spend. Do you think with the injuries we've got, Eddie, of course, has said that, he hasn't even got a list written out yet. I don't believe that, but I would imagine they've already got their eyes on a few players. We're already being linked with the likes of Calvin Phillips again, and Ruben Neves loan, of course, is another one that's been bounded around. But what's your take? Do you think that they're looking at the transfer window now and thinking, we might have to change our original targets, or do you think they'll stick to their guns and go for the same ones because players are going to be back, probably by January?
A bit of both. I think once the summer window closed, I think that list was already being compiled for the January transfer, regardless of injury. That's the nature of football. You're going to have to improve where you need to improve. I think, I'm sure there's a plan in place of who. There's probably identified targets already, probably, 12 months ago. And again, once that summer, if they didn't get them in the summer, if they're still available for a right price, for the right deal, for everything that we've discussed previously, those names will still be on that list. So I think that Dan Ashworth is a very intelligent man, and he knows what he's doing with a new recruitment team in place and finding these little gems around the world. So we'll just have to wait and see if it's a loan, but if it's a full deal. But I think there'll be now key areas that they'll address. For example, centre forward, striker, somebody we need, like we said for a while on here, that we need another one in. And I think there might be a midfielder, basically the spine of the team. I think they'll be looking at something within the spine of the team. If that's a loan, if that's a full transfer, we'll have to wait and see. But again, it's just trusting the people that are in place and why they're employed to do their job, to get the players in and head with Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth and Steve Nixon and of the like, to have that discussion. And I do, like what you said, I don't believe that Eddie Howe hasn't written names down that he wants. I think he genuinely knows who he wants. And again, whether the price is right, then we move forward. If not, then we'll go to the next target. We'll just whittle away and work hard behind the scenes to get the players that he actually wants in. And yes, it's not down to it's down to Dan Ashworth and the scouting group, but it's really who Eddie Howe wants, not anybody else. It's who he wants and who can improve the team, not be stagnant. It's those who can actually push us on further on a short-term basis or on a longer-term basis. So I think Eddie Howe knows he's just playing games with the media and playing games with us as fans because we just don't know. And that's the great thing about it. And let's see who comes in.
Okay, Stu, do you think, Barry's asking a question, do you believe the money will be an issue in January, loans, etc., or is it just more crap being spread about the club's finances? Yeah, we've heard that Newcastle are skint and got no money. We heard that in January, in August, didn't we? In the summer window, we're told that we had no money to spend. I mean, again, I think that's just the media. Reports that we're over 40 million over financial fair play is another one that PDK has heard. Tom Dixon saying, do you think we'll bring in a defender in January? Lots of questions already. People are already got one eye on the transfer window, Stu. What's your thoughts about it?
Well, I think the ownership model that we've got have already proven that they are proactive rather than reactive. And to echo what Kev was saying there, they would have had targets already assigned 12 months ago, 6 months ago, 18 months ago. And for each position, they'll have 4 or 5 quality players that they think would improve the squad that we've got. And when they become available, they'll go and get them. And that's what happened with Isak. I don't think he was meant to be signed where he was, but he came available. He was on their list and they went and got him. So, yes, we've had injuries, but come January, I don't think, or I'd like to think that the injuries list won't be as extensive as it is currently. And the phrase I would use is knee-jerk doesn't work. I think Everton have proven that. Chelsea have proven that. There's a lot of clubs out there that'll spend money, panic buy, I suppose, is something that people are more familiar with. And we don't do that. Now, we are also in a position where financially we can take a hit as in not qualify for certain competitions, which I still believe we will. But they know where they want to go. They know where we are in the ascendancy, and I think it suits the club the more that the press put out that we're skint, because that's what they want people to think, and I'm quite sure they're not. And we've already seen a few sponsorships being added, and I'm quite certain there'll be more. Once it gets to the end of the financial year, there's no way they'll be even close to worrying about financial fair play. That's for certain. They're too shrewd, too intelligent. They've invested too much into this to get caught out in all the adverse publicity that would come with it. So if they need to buy a centre half, they'll get one if that person's available, but they wouldn't just go and buy someone for the sake of it. If they need a centre forward, if they need a right winger, if they need a left back, whatever they want, they believe they need, they will get if that player becomes available, and will benefit Newcastle United, not just short term but long term. The only time they wanted to buy for the short term was their first window, and that was imperative that we stayed up. And even then, they went and got astute signings and made sure that they got the right people, the right personalities to fit the roles. So we're 2, 3, 4 windows on now. The type of player that we'll be bringing in will have to be first team ready or capable of improving the squad now. It's not just getting numbers into stay up. We know we'll stay up. We need to bring people in who's going to help us go up that next rung of the ladder, and that doesn't come cheap. So if we do get people in January, they'll be better than what we've got.
And it's pointless buying players when players are going to come back from injury. You know, what are you going to do with the players then? You can go and buy players, and you know, then you've got a full squad in January, and you know, that it is.
You've seen people say, oh, we'll get 3 or 4 people in January. Well, that means 3 or 4 have to leave the squad. I know Tonali's one of them. You know, he can't have a squad number come January. But, you know, you've got to start thinking, it's a very, very fine balancing act that they'll have to keep, because it's not just, I know we've mentioned this on numerous occasions, it's not just 11 on the team, on the pitch on a Saturday or a Sunday. It's the squad itself, it's the training ground, it's everything else. And you can't just jettison people out. Yes, I'm one of the ones that said you've got to be cutthroat, but you have to do it in the right way. And I'm sure we will. I'm sure if we do make a signing, they did go Anthony Gordon this time, well, in the January transfer window, and he wasn't an instant hit, but we all begged, give him time. They know what they were doing. They were going for someone with pace, with him, Isaac, and Miggy up front, and the time that the 3 of them have been able to play, and we've got full team behind them, we've looked really, really impressive. So they know what they're looking for. It's just whether that player becomes available. And at the moment, 2 months away from a window, 12 injuries down in a suspension, of course, people are going to start panicking. But there's no need to. The bumps in the road that people are referring to now that we touched on Sunday, they're going to happen. Even when we start winning trophies, we'll still not win every game. No team ever does. So I'm relaxed with the direction that the football team's going and how successful Newcastle United will be. And if it means we've got to have what we really had, that was our first loss since
August.
First loss in 2 months, and that's it. That's the end of the world. So if it's another 2 months before we lose another game, we'll do all right. And even if we lose the next game, which I believe we will win, then it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. You know, as long as it's justified, and as long as the players stick together, and what Trippier did, going back to the first point, that actually shows that they're sticking together. So we can all be football managers and say we should sign this player, that player, but they've got lists of people who they want already, and it's nice to watch them get signed.
I'm just laughing at cynical Jim. I've never heard anyone compared to a poppadom. A new striker is a must. Isaac and Wilson are made of poppadoms. I get the analogy. I get the description, Jim. They're quite fragile. George, thoughts on the transfer window? Do you think they'll be rethinking it?
Additions rather than rethinking, I would say, if they're going to do anything, because I'm sure that the names, as Stu's rightly said, the names have been in the hat probably more than several months as to who they would want to bring in what positions. So what the injuries might do is they might adjust them, and instead of one here and one there, it'll be two there and one here. But the names, I'm sure that the players and the quality of the players, they'll already be written down and approved, I suspect, by Eddie Howe as part of anybody else. So that side of it doesn't worry me at all. You're right to talk about knee-jerk reactions. Stu's hit the nail on the head. For too many years, we watched Newcastle United go out and buy, panic buy, people who are supposedly had reputations and ended up being cart horses at Newcastle and were transferred out within months of coming. So don't want any more of that. We've got a plan. Let's stick to the plan. And I'm sure there's names in that plan. And let's have some of those names in. But I think that I'd be amazed if they don't already know who they want to bring in. That even means accounting for injuries. So, yeah, let's stick to the plan and let's get people in that we want. But I don't see it being a great upheaval for the management of Newcastle United because I suspect it's already done.
Steve, can I just jump in before you go? 'Cause I'll forget what I was going to say. Both me and Mitch have got man flu, so that's why we're a bit subdued today. Because we had the heat over. It's actually his 50th birthday, and I got a message from Paul Tweedy, who said he was going to buy the Heat a pint for his 50th birthday. So I passed that on to Heat, and Heat replied, "I hope Paul gets a sat nav for his birthday to find the beeping bar." So there you go. I've just got to mention that.
Brilliant. Okay, Al-Walid, somebody sent us a question for you. Actually, where is it? And it follows the transfer analogy. Here you go, Alan McKenzie. Says Al-Walid, can you broker a deal over in Saudi Arabia for Jeff Hendrick? He has got to be worth 100 million or so.
Well, for me, he's a good player, but it's the circumstances. Yeah. But 100 is too much.
So that's a no. That's a no. You couldn't do it.
Well, Lascelles has been bubbled around, talking the fans, especially the fans. They like Lascelles, so who knows?
Do you think the Neves deal? You know, if there is no ban on Newcastle or Premier League clubs loaning players from the likes of those clubs, do you think that deal's got legs? Do you think Neves would come to Newcastle?
I don't think this will happen because Al Hilal need the player, and already have Neymar have ACL for the whole of the season. Also, Savic have some injury for a month, so I don't think this is an option. And one thing, make me before Neves go to Al Hilal, it was a rumor that he will go for Al Hilal and will be loaned to Newcastle. So this is, I think, just continuous news bubble around. I don't think there is any truth in it, but it's not impossible.
Okay.
Yeah, for the January transfer window, I know the club have, of course, as you said, guys, they have a list, and happy for that. But I would like to finish this list very, very quickly. We don't want to spend the whole month wasting the time on the negotiating, because this is I respect that we have long-term goals. Those players will have a contract for 5 years, but also we should be more flexible, and it's not bad to bring a player for short-term goal. You can bring a player for a loan, and you can see, because we need the players. We need number of players to continue this season. We have a lot of opportunities in different competitions. I have to be careful when I say this, but I hope you get the point. For example, before the takeover, you remember we bring Wilson and Joe Willock, and for a loan. After that, long transfer, for transfer for good. I think that was cost 50 million. And look how those players are essential in Eddie Howe's squad. And last couple of signing, Tonali and Barnes. Look how is that end with more than, I think, 120 million. So we need to be flexible with short-term goals. We need really players. It's not that hard to bring a player even for short-term goal. This will help the club, because it doesn't mean that we didn't get the player we want. We just wait for this player for the coming window, and we really need to improve the squad. with and even good players. We shouldn't have a great player or the target A list.
Okay. Mitch, thoughts on the transfer window? Are there going to be changes to the plan, do you think, or do you think they'll stick to the plan?
I think they've already shown in other windows that, yes, they want to be ahead of the game. They want to have proactive moves ready in the transfer market. But I think they've also shown that they can be reactive if a good deal turns up. If something's there on offer to be done, or if something needs to be done, it'll be made to happen. And then further windows adjusted accordingly. And I think that's the situation we'll see. No panic here in terms of panic buy. We have got to be cautious because we're still treading a fine line in terms of the wages to turnover side of things. We still have a rather large wage bill comparatively with players that need to be moved away from the squad too. So maybe some more work needs to be done on getting the players outside of things. But I'm quite sure that there'll be wiggle room to adjust if come January we really do need to add to that squad. I personally would like to see us do so. There's certainly more than the wiggle room to do that. In fact, you may well find that the window's already been adjusted accordingly come the opening of the window. Because I think I'd like to see where, and I'm sure Eddie says this all the time, he wants to get the players in as early as possible because he wants as much time with the players as possible. Because, as Anthony Gordon said, not many of them arrive, if any, anyhow fit. So it would be likely to be 4 to 6 weeks before we saw them start the first team. So you really want to get them in at the front end of the window. So no panic, and we certainly don't want panic buys. We've done that enough in the past, wasted enough money. We've got to be very, very, very careful how we spend our money still, even with new deals coming in. So I think we'll see deals done, and I think we'll see them done early in the window.
I'm not sure how anybody can claim that we're £40 million over financial fair play at this moment in time as well. I mean, it's a Twitter account that's put that out. I haven't had time to guarantee that it's that person, but I wouldn't disbelieve someone in the chat. But I think I just think again, it's how on earth you would know, how on earth you would sit and calculate that. You even the best accountant would struggle to try and work out the finances of a Premier League football club.
Steve, we've got journalists who were telling us that Everton were no problem. They were working with the Premier League. They were going to be no problem. Yes, they were going to be close, but they'd found a way around it, and it wasn't going to be an issue. And it turns out they were something like 300 million over.
Yep.
So it just shows what people know. You don't know unless you've got all the figures at hand and you're sitting in front of the accounts with people that have prepared them. So again, more white noise in the background. And in some cases, I'm damn sure wishful thinking on the part of the journalists writing the stories.
Oh, yes, 100%. Halfway through the show, time for the ads. Get your Ask George questions in. Stu, go on. Stu, you sounded like Max, the guy who goes, whatever he's called.
We have owners who have made successful careers out of thinking outside the box and creating things. So, pathetically, when Al Walid says Neves definitely won't be coming to Newcastle, it made me think, how about Casemiro goes to Hilal to replace him because Man United need him off their wage bill and he's not really fitting in with Ten Hag. So they might have approached Man United and said, we're willing to take him in January. Depends how they vote next week. So that could be another vote for us. And that could cause its own little triangle. That's just a hypothetical. It's not something I know. But that's how they will do business. We can do this for you. You did this for us. And look how many players went to Saudi in the summer. So it's not as
rumor Casemiro for Al Nassr. Rumors here.
It's still a PIF team, yeah.
Interesting. I'm sure Jordan Anderson will be looking for an SOS to get out of Saudi as well, because he's just been stripped of the captaincy and he's playing in front of less than 1,000 people. I don't think he's going to be there too much longer either. But we'll wait and see. Will it benefit Newcastle? Won't it benefit Newcastle? January will tell us the story. The vote next week will as well. Here's the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find out more about them from their website mrvickies.co.uk or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to United Group Travel, UK coach holiday firm based in Morpeth. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. They're now taking bookings for 2024. You can call 01670 632 460, 0791 666 4174 or 07957 141 654, or go to the website unitedgrouptravel.com. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video to like it. It does us a big favour. Click share to share to your other social media and let people know about NUFC Matters. We're also a podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. If you want to help the show financially, you can take out a £25 one-off membership. You get a scarf, a pen, a cup and a membership card. How do you get it? Go to nufcmatters.com, look for membership. If you've got a smartphone, then put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight to that section on the website. We also support the food bank on this channel. You can donate to the food bank today by going to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. We do support events on this channel as well. If you've got an event, please send it in and we'll promote it. The Tyne Theatre and Opera House are doing a Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle event, the Class of 84, 25th of January 2024. Book now by calling 0844 249 1000. And the Tyneside Irish Centre, they're doing an event with Frank Clark and John Gibson on Thursday, December the 7th. You can get tickets from nufcmatters.com and they are priced at £15. There's also some tickets available on Groupon. Don't forget, you can catch me 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, with Rye, Dave and Daz on the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show, 7 till 9, and you can catch us on the Red, the Toon and the Cat and on Toon Radio's website. WhatsApp us on the day 0330 043 2002, the perfect way to start your day.
Okay, every time we do one of these shows, we do a little bit of this. Okay, Barry Hogan says, George, I love your amazing stories. Who was the best goalkeeper you ever played with, and did they make it as a professional?
I suppose at junior level or at third team level, there's somebody I'd criticised quite a lot was Brian Harvey, but he did make it. I mean, he had a full professional career. Just he wasn't good enough for Newcastle United. Didn't like them because he was big. You know, he got rid of Ronnie Simpson on the basis that Ronnie Simpson, an international goalkeeper, was too small, and Brian Harvey got in, but not for long. Brian was a good goalkeeper for stopping things, but his hands were put on hot, so his wrists were limp, you know. But I would say Brian Harvey, and he played a lot in the first team and had a full career elsewhere, in the lower divisions mostly. But he had a good long career. I did have the pleasure of playing once with the great Ronnie Simpson in the third team when he was coming back from injury, but I can't claim that as a massive thing. Once it doesn't actually make him a teammate. But Brian Harvey of the ones that I played regularly with.
Okay, Tom Dixon says, ask George, who's been our player of the season so far, George?
Trippier for me. Until the last couple of games, he's been outstanding. I mean, apart from anything else, you just need to look at his stats. I mean, he's got better stats than most midfielders in terms of assists and the things that he does. So, yeah, at the moment, it's Trippier. I want to see Bruno come in and turn that over for the rest of the season, so we get the best out of Bruno. But at the moment, Trippier for me. I suppose it could be because sorry.
Question
what I was going to say was the only other thing I was going to say was it may be there's a bit of me because I used to play fullback occasionally. Sees somebody that I would like to be.
Okay, Tim says, question for George, where in the world is his best place visited other than Dubai to visit Neil?
Oh, where in the world? Two places. My heart sometimes quite a lot lives in Greece. If anybody, if you want a fantastic holiday, Athens, Piraeus area, look at all the ancient monuments there. It's an incredible place. But then America, in the 80s, early 80s, I spent 3 weeks for a month. Neil, I can't remember. It was probably 2 months in America on secondment with the American Navy. And I went to Boston, did some lectures at MIT, which was amazing. Did some work with the people at MIT. Then I went to Washington to work in the naval research facilities that they have at Washington, and was offered a job there, but Marjorie wouldn't go because it would upset Neil. And then I went to Texas and gave a lecture to all of the oil industry in the Astrodome. And if you can imagine standing in the lower tier of the Astrodome and looking at yourself on a screen that's 50 meters high, and watch yourself talking, it's just awe-inspiring. So there's the two places. But Marjorie used to say, if somebody said to her she couldn't come home to Newcastle, where would you live? And she would have said Athens straight away. The Greeks love Marjorie. So
great stuff. Last two. Ian says, question for George: did you prefer Kev last night when he was off screen? I think he's got a face for radio, says Ian.
No, I'm a Kev supporter. I'm happy with Kev on the screen. He speaks a lot of sense, that young man, actually. And people would do well to listen.
PDK says, what law in football that we don't have now, but did back in the day, would George bring back?
Oh, I would stop protecting the goalkeepers. Yeah, throw in Stu, yeah. But we've got it and they just don't use it. That's the annoying thing for me. The rule's still there. No, I think we protect goalkeepers far too much, and I would start putting a time limit on how long they can keep the ball in their hands or out of play. Because if you think about it, I talk about Ronnie Simpson as being a great goalkeeper. Ronnie Simpson used to have to bounce the ball after every so many steps and get rid of it within, was it 10 seconds, 6 seconds? Otherwise, there was an indirect free kick. I'm not saying we want to be that draconian, but at the moment, the goalkeepers have a capacity for destroying the game if they use the lax way that challenged by referees. I mean, all this. When did all this catching the ball and lying on your belly, flying flat on your belly come in? Oh, that's a modern thing, and the referees have got to tell them they quit it or else. But they won't. It'll go by. But yeah, protecting goalkeepers is the one I would like to see altered.
Okay, that's your Ask George for this week. Great answer, George, says Tim. And Ian says, George, you're a legend, end of. So thank you for your words. Thank you.
You're very kind, all of you, very kind.
We have had a couple of questions, mainly transfer related. The VAR, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. VAR again. Mozza says, so the real VAR recording is being released tonight. All the Arsenal fans will be going crackers again, no doubt. Is there any point in releasing these tapes so long after the event, Kev? Because Mozza's right. All that's going to happen is it's going to bring up the whole situation again. People will be talking about it for the next couple of days. It'll give all these people who've got nothing to do because there's no Premier League time to talk about it on TV and talk sport and all of that. Newcastle will just get hammered again, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just bringing Newcastle into the fray of a story at the end of the day. I think it should be released immediately. And Mitchell will tell you, watching NFL, they'll tell you no stone unturned. Everything's looked at, everything's seen, and everybody hears about it. From the base in New York, whether their VAR, the video review panel are, or whatever, we're used to that, but it's immediate. Then then you can't have an argument and say, oh, yeah, well, actually, yeah, that's right. You made a good decision there because you know what's being said. You can't hear what's being said directly to the referee, but the referee has a microphone and they'll call it over the stadium to 100,000 people and say, hey, this is the foul. This is what's happened. This is what's going on. Then you move on. And then there's no, we call it Monday, the Monday quarterback. You can't really, the Monday morning quarterback. You can't then have an argument about it. Then you can see the decision, why they made it. I think it should be something along the lines of that, of releasing it earlier. Yeah, but you're right in terms of now we've got nothing to really talk about because it's international weekend or 2 weeks, and so Newcastle are going to be relevant right in the front and center of everything, and so the Arsenal fans will be agitated. But again, move on. Again, can we not just release it earlier and find out and understand why day after, 72 hours after the game, can we not release it? And then the whole thing just stops, but then there'll be something else to argue about further down the road, I'm sure. But yeah, I think again, not bringing American sports into it, but I think it's got to be like a rugby or an NFL approach to where things have got to be said, even when look on the video review system, but then have a microphone to say, even into a live TV coverage or something of that nature. I promoted a little while ago for people in the St. James's Park, especially, we've got one screen right up in the top corner, which hardly anybody can see. Why can't we do it around the board, the advertising board, saying, hey, this is what we're checking, this is what we're looking for, this is the result, or something of that, so everybody's informed. They might not agree with it, might not. But again, it's just ways to use technology, which I think will make people a little bit more calmer and a bit more understanding of why they made the decision. They might not agree with it. Look, it's football. We don't agree with everything, but at the same time, at least you've got a reasoning, you've got something, what they've said, of what they've saw or seen. And then we can, again, move on with the game, move on with the next one, or what, as long as there's some dialogue, then I think everybody will be relatively happy about that. Again, I think they're dragging the heels in. They've got the 10-inch stilettos and sand dragging them, and it's unfair for the fan. And it's unfair for the viewing public, and it's unfair for the players ultimately playing the game, because they really don't know half the time what's going on. And the length of time is the bigger problem. And going into an injury thing, based on we've got half of our first team squad out, if you're sitting around 5 minutes, for argument's sake, and you're standing there, your body becomes at rest, and your body becomes not cool, but then you got to go again. So that's when sort of repetitive injuries start to come into play, or overuse injuries start to come into play. So I think if it's verbalized and things like that, I think it'll cut out a lot of issues across the board. Sorry.
That's all right. It's okay. Kev, thanks for that. Al-Walid, what's your thoughts on VAR's, the situation, the Arsenal game is now going to get brought up again. Everyone's going to hear about it, and we're going to hear this VAR. Should that technology be allowed to come out earlier? Should we hear it live on the day?
Well, of course, it would be better, but I still thinking why now? Arsenal is a bit far. Why now they do it? Why they release it? It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really something that is going to. It's not going to be beneficial, is it? It's just going to open the wounds again.
Now it's like maybe they are bored. It's FIFA days, but for example, still VAR still issues what they play, what they didn't play. I know, I understand it was unique stage with 3 possible decision to make this goal not allowed, but I don't think they do that for favor for Newcastle. A lot of obvious incidents should be in our side, but we couldn't. I always on Twitter I saw this photo in Bournemouth while the defender pull out Almiron shirt. It was very, very bold. So nobody talk about that. For me, still it's not what will make the fans. I think they're going different. In some cases, they just doesn't care about or doesn't make a fuss about it, and other yes. So it's good to have a standard for everything. I think this will make the fans more happier.
Yeah, lots of opinions coming in, Stu. Manager should have 3 challenges. VAR should get involved, not get involved at all unless the manager tells the 4th official. The biggest problem with VAR in our league, sadly, isn't the ineptitude. It's the secrecy. The technology should be live. Yeah. It works perfectly well in rugby and nobody argues. Yeah, lots of opinions as always. But I mean, this just bringing this out now, 2 weeks after the game, Stu.
It's the thing is, Steve. It's the thing with VAR is not going to go away until it's managed properly, and that's it. Until it's operated properly. Now, what we've got is what the VAR should be there for, is meant to be there for, is for clear and obvious errors. Now, if it takes 3, 4, 5 minutes to try and dissect something, is it correct or not? Then that's them playing God. That's not pointing out a clear and obvious error. So maybe they should introduce a time limit, like say 30 seconds. If there's nothing that's proven within that time, then the referee's decision stands. Gives some power back to the referee. But then, if you're going to be skeptical or go down the conspiracy theories, some people might take longer to make a decision to suit certain teams rather than others, when it would go against them. You see, oh, well, the 30 seconds have elapsed, but yes, it was really a penalty, but we didn't really get that angle until. So there's so many ways about it, but what we haven't got is consistency across the board. When I say that, I mean in all the leagues, because the VAR rules are different in the Champions League to what they are in the Premier League to what they are in the UEFA competitions, as in the national teams. So we need to have where everyone is familiar with the rules, so the referees do get the power back, and at least then they're in a position to say, look, this is the call. But to me, too much is being made of it, and as Kev said, it's a slow news week with it being International Week. So who's good for news? And it's Newcastle. Now, what they should be doing, instead of trying to apologise to Arsenal fans that they're bringing it up again or warning them as the message went out, to warn Arsenal fans, warn them that it wasn't out, the ball wasn't out, to warn them that it wasn't a foul, and to warn there was no offside and it was a perfectly good goal given. What's it to warn them about? They need to just suck it up, buttercup, and get on with it. But the main thing is with what they should be doing tonight, instead of trying to dissect again and bring it up, why aren't they having an hour's programme on where is Arteta's call from the Premier League to explain his words after the game? Was that not bringing the game into disrepute? Because that seems to have just been washed away, and all he was doing was deflecting from a very poor performance because we battered them. We scared them for the second time in 3 visits to St James's. We intimidated them and got the better of them. And he knew it. His team bottled it that day, and we beat them. And he come out with that. It's straight out the Ferguson textbook. If that had been, I don't want to say if that had been Eddie Howe. Let's just say, had that been Sean Dyche, he would have been up in charge by the FA by now. Absolutely would have. So why is Arteta allowed to say these things? And if he said it wasn't about the referee, it wasn't about that, get him up to explain it. What was disgusting? What was embarrassing? What was disgraceful? Talking about his own team's performance, but that's not the way he went on, was it? So he's been proven wrong, but look at the fury that's happened since. Look at the column inches it's got. Look at even now, 2 weeks later, we're talking about it. You know, it's still gaining media publicity. And this is what needs to be stopped. He needs to be nipped in the bud, because what he said was wrong, what he said was disrespectful, what he said was unprofessional. And he should be getting charged. They shouldn't be looking at a goal that's already been given, because that just, again, fans the flames. Get him charged.
Okay. Yeah. What's your thoughts on this, then, Mitch? The VAR, it'll be out tonight. Should it have been out earlier?
If they've not helped themselves by giving it 2 weeks before releasing this now. So you watch on social media, we'll have a section of the Arsenal tinfoil hat brigade out now saying, I've done a voice analysis and look at how these voices have been dubbed and changed and cut, and there's a definite gap here. And you watch it all come out now. What they've done is they've thought, oh, there's a fire, it's going out. What we're going to use to put it out, this fire blanket or this big can of petrol. And what they're going to do is pour the big can of petrol on the embers of a fire and watch it flare up again. It's ridiculous. They haven't helped themselves at all with saying 2 weeks later. And that's for warning Arsenal. Warning them for what? That they're going to be butthurt again. Because nothing that anybody does, nothing is going to change the result. Newcastle United 1, Arsenal 0. That'll be in the record books for time immemorial. And when it's long forgotten, people won't be talking about VAR. And when it is released, I hope somebody gets hold of the video and overdubs it with somebody with a Geordie accent, saying, "Get on, give the goal, it's a goal, man, go on." Something like that. Let's just make it out the farce that it is. And I've seen people saying, well, what it would do if VAR, and sure, exactly that. If VAR can't say anything wrong with what the on-field decision is, you go with the on-field decision. That is the point of VAR. And Stu's right, Arteta still hasn't been pulled up. And he should be. Because everybody in the dog has said, that's a goal, it stands, get on with it. What he did after that game was pathetic. I think it was interesting that when Luke Edwards challenged him about, well, why do you think it shouldn't have been given? He couldn't actually bring himself to answer the question. He just said, is that the question? Really? And got all huffy and like a teenager about it. Which again tells me you can't give me a sound argument as to why you think that goal shouldn't stand. And so, again, it's like all they're doing is trying to cover their own ass at the FA with VAR. And it's not the technology, it's how it's used. No other country seems to have the level of problems with it that we do. It's reflective of the standards of officiating in our country, and it's reflective of the pathetic desperation and the erosion of the power of the on-field referee. It feels like the on-field referee at the minute in the English game genuinely is rarely in charge of the game, and is frightened to make a decision. And that comes from, though, reactions like Arteta's, reactions like Klopp's, reactions from people like Ten Hag kicking off when they don't get their own little way. And that's where the FA is getting it wrong, and the Premier League rather is getting it wrong on two fronts. But releasing the transcripts 2 weeks after, I'm telling you now, you watch social media tomorrow, there'll be loads of specialist analysis from so-called experts telling you where the gaps in the audio is, and there must be words missing from there, and there must be this missing from that, and this voice doesn't sound like that voice, and I stuck it under a spectral analysis. It's just going to go crazy again. All from that end, we should just sit back, enjoy a nice hot cup of tea, and watch the shenanigans unfold.
George, you're going to be able to hear it tonight. Should it have come out earlier, the Arsenal VAR stuff?
Yeah, it should have. On the day of the match, when it happened, that's when it should have come out, not 2 weeks later. Or the other thing that people forget about Arteta's rant, he was deflecting criticism from his team because they spent 90 minutes against Newcastle and had one shot on goal. Our goalkeeper didn't have a save to make. He had one catch to make. It wasn't even a shot. And that's what upset him, I think, more than anything. And Stu was right. We're actually battered them. No wonder we've got tired legs in the last couple of weeks. That those lads have been through hell in different games, and until they get to the system that works in rugby, it works in cricket, works in American sport, where everybody can hear what's said, it'll never go away, because there's always going to be the conspiracy theorists at the end will say, but what did they say then, and what did they do that? Look at last year, our Crystal Palace game, when the fullback called Mitchell pushed what's his name, the Willock in the back. That's the only angle that VAR didn't look at. Somebody should have been asking why, because they should look at all the angles, every angles, like they do in rugby, like they do in cricket. And you hear exactly what's said. And until that happens, VAR is going to be a hostage to fortune and a hostage to conspiracy theory and a hostage to corruption. Some people are actually saying that the people at Stockley Park are corrupt, which is dreadful. What does that say about our national game? It doesn't say a lot for me, I'm afraid. So yeah, the lads are right. It's wrong. If it's going to be done, it's got to be done at the time that it happens. The other thing I'd come back to, I talked about charging Arteta. What about charging his team? While we were waiting for an out of ball decision, an offside decision, a foul decision, the Arsenal players were standing around the referee. Every one of them, even the goalkeeper, came up. And then Steve Hasty said to me, he says, if they're there much longer, you get a kettle out and he'll give them all a cup of tea. That's how close they were. And yet Manchester United last season, because they all crowded around the referee, they were fined. Where's the fine for Arsenal for that? They should have been chased away, and that's to do with the referee as well, of course. He should have had the sense to do that. So there's lots of things in it, but the least thing in it is, Neil's absolutely right. The least thing in it is, we beat Arsenal 1-0, and you're never going to get over that or change that, and because it's Arsenal, it grinds on me. I think I said to you all the other night, my history of football is, you talked about Arsenal, you didn't talk about Arsenal, you talked about the Arsenal, because they were the club you wanted to aspire to. They were the best on the field, or they were best off the field. They were the Brill Cream boys and all that sort of thing, and everybody wanted to be with the Arsenal. No, the Arsenal now, they're tripe, they're worse than others now. They're so bad and whingy, and most of that's down to Arteta. At least with Wenger, there was a semblance of common sense and honesty in it. But with Arteta, it's just raw emotion, and he can't control it. And if he can't control it, then the Football Premier League should.
Plenty of opinions, some great rants tonight as well. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to everybody watching. Thanks to Kevin. Thanks to George, Alwaleed, Stu and Mitch. Back tomorrow, 6 o'clock with the journalist Ian Murder. Always great to have Ian on. And Thursday, Super Matt and Gibbo is 6 o'clock. And Friday, the Amigos is at 5 as usual. Good night from Kevin's dog as well. We are off. Take care, lads. See you later.
See you. Cheers.